Waiting for the microphone. Good? Okay. Thanks. So as you can see in the bulletin, I am an interfaith minister, which is a little different from an Episcopal minister. And I want to say I had a little trouble tying all these stories together, so bear with me. Starting with the story of Job, who, he finally gets it and he apologizes to God for thinking that he knew better. Who of us here thinks we know better, doesn't think we know better than God? So I just want to tell you a little story which many of you have probably heard before. Scientists have finally figured out how to make man, and as you can see, we're heading in that direction. And so they challenge God to a man-making contest. And God says, well, okay, why not? And the scientists go and they start to scoop up some dirt. And God says, oh no, get your own dirt. So I think this is a great reminder, that however we view God, whether as Christian or other faiths, that the source of all things is greater than each individual one of us, and all of us together make that whole. And we can't do any of it without each other. Even as we have our divisions and our disagreements, even as we are angry with God for the lot of our life, even as our egos take over and let us think, hey, I know better than God, or I know better than this person or that person, or this country or that country. I think we're kind of stuck in that duality in this plane, good, bad, right, wrong. And in God, there's neither. There's none. It's just all one. So I think the other message of the Job story is if we suffer enough, we'll get more. So I think that that's sort of insidious in our culture because these stories are very much part of our culture. We have grown up with the Bible, many of us, so many people in this country. So what would it look like if we put down the suffering and just decided, no, I'm not going to suffer anymore. I'm just going to be fully engrossed in love with God, in love with life. I'm going to do the best I can. And yes, there will be suffering, but I'm not going to take on suffering in order to get a greater reward. I'm just wondering, what would it look like if we did that? And, I don't know about you, but I've had some hard times in my life, and people have come to me with the platitudes. We all get them. God wouldn't give you more than you can handle. And my answer is always, please, God, think that I can handle less. So we never also know what's going to come. Job went through all this suffering. He lost everything. But in the end, he was restored, and he received back even more, suffering or not. The other thing that struck me about this story that I almost hesitate to say in a Christian church is, doesn't it strike you that a God who would take a dare from Satan may not be the God we want to be with? He is saying, well, let's test Job. Why not? And here he creates suffering for the one who is maybe considered to be the most loyal to him. And I thought about this a lot, and it occurred to me, well, if God created us in his image, why would God not have some of those human attributes? For example, being unkind, being testy, having an ego. And so what does that mean for us? Can we get through this life without having those attributes? So just something to contemplate. Then the Hebrews text says, unlike the other high priests, Jesus had no need to offer sacrifices day after day, first for his own sins, and then for those of the people. This he did once for all when he offered himself. But it seems to me that in over 2,000 years, we still haven't really accepted that gift. We still believe ourselves to be sinners, and I'm not saying we're not. We all have those attributes within us that are, let's call it imperfect, for lack of a better word. But how does God see us? Do you think God sees us as lowly sinners and wants us to suffer? Maybe in the story of Job, it would look that way. If we suffer enough, we'll get more. But when we come to Jesus, there's a whole different story. What if God sees us as his precious, loved creations? What if we could see ourselves as God's precious, loved creations. And yes, we make mistakes. We do things that are unholy, and I mean that in both spellings of the word, W-H-O-L-L-Y, and unholy, H-O-L-Y. We do things that are holy, H-O-L-E-Y. And that's just part of human nature. We've also been given free will. So we have to choose every day, and sometimes every moment, what are we serving? Who are we serving? Are we serving the highest good of all, which we'll never know what that is? Or are we serving our own personal self-interest? And these are just questions I have. And again, how would it be if we could see ourselves and then each other as God's precious, loved creations? How might we treat ourselves? Would we be kinder? Does anybody have I have a voice that goes, hey, you stupid idiot. I don't know if anybody else has a voice like that. Why did you do that stupid thing? What's wrong with you? And it sort of spirals down into, what am I doing on this earth, you know? And I think everybody has a voice of self-criticism. And from what I've read, that's healthy to the degree that it helps us make better choices in terms of the way we behave and treat each other and also treat ourselves. But it also diminishes the beauty that God gave us to be. So I've given up self-criticism many years in a row for Lent. I can't say that it's made a difference. I still have the voice. And some say that that voice comes from our parents, our peers, our culture, our teachers, our society. So what do we do to acknowledge that we have this voice? We recognize it. We say, oh, I'm beating myself up again. But I'm God's precious, loved creature, too. So how can I speak to myself with more loving kindness? And then how might we treat others if we viewed them as God's precious, loved creatures? So then we get to the blind beggar. He was silenced. Nobody wanted him to say that he wanted help. You know, how many of us actually say, and I'm so guilty of this, I need help. People reach out to me. I'm getting surgery in a couple of weeks, and walking is getting more difficult. And my beloved husband will reach out and say, here, let me help you up. It's like, no, I'm going to do it myself. How many of us are willing to accept the help, but not only accept it, but reach out and say, hey, I'm not doing too well today. I could use some help. I could use an ear. I could use a meal. I could use some friendship, just a cup of coffee, or just to know someone is there that cares. There are a lot of lonely people in this world. So this man, he has the guts to stand up and say, hey, Jesus, I'm here. I need some help. I can't see. Can you heal me? And Jesus stops and says, bring him here. And he is healed. Now, Jesus does not say, and I think this is really important, I healed him. Jesus says his faith has healed him. So I think these lessons are about faith. Job having faith no matter what, even as he went into the human morass of doubt and what's wrong with me. And God's faith in Job, because God had faith that Job would stay loyal to God no matter what hardship he had to go through. And I think that's a sort of twist on this, so maybe you've all thought that in the past. And then the blind man's faith in Jesus. So if we are healed by faith, and it doesn't take an outside intervention, and maybe it does, maybe it's faith in that thing outside of us, what are we waiting for? And what does healing look like? I recently read a beautiful book called The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. I think he's an addiction specialist, psychiatrist, and he talks about healing and curing. And ideally, we want both. We all want to get well. We want to be done with our ailments, whatever they are. We don't want to get sick. We want to just be cured. But sometimes healing doesn't look like getting well. Sometimes healing is in the soul, or in the mind, or in the emotional state that we're living in. And what does that mean for us? It means that we could have faith that we don't know what's going to come tomorrow, or the next day, or in the next 50 years. But we can have faith that that healing is there for us all the time. It's there for the planet. It's there for our children. It's there for each other. And we don't know what that's going to look like. It might look like this, and it might look like that, and it might look like a combination of all of it. So what does it mean for each one of us to embrace healing? It might not look like curing. But if we can come to peace within our own hearts and souls and treat each other and ourselves with love and devotion and care, we can heal the ills that have come upon us. So on the human level, Mattei talks about ancestral lineage that we pass on from generation to generation, the things, good and bad, that our ancestors have been. And we don't even know we're doing it. Sometimes, how many of you raising children or when you were children said, I'm never going to do that to my kids? And then you had kids and out it comes just spontaneously. And you go, oh my God, what is it with me? There goes that voice. You idiot. Didn't you say you would never do that? And we're doing it. So we get to have a chance, a choice to become conscious. What did our parents give us? And how can we drop the blame of our parents for whatever it was they did that wasn't wholesome? Because they had things done to them as well, and their parents to them, and so forth and so on. One of my family lineage stories on the Lebanese side is that my great-grandmother, or maybe my great-great-grandmother, these stories become apocryphal after a while, was married at the age of 9, and was on her wedding night, her husband did not take his conjugal rights, but allowed her to play with her dolls. So that is in my lineage. So how much of that idea, first of all, the enlightenment of not imposing himself on a 9-year-old child, and second, the idea that in this lineage, there are children who are forced into marriage. I carry all of that, whether I'm conscious of it or not. So there's this ancestral lineage that we have, and we can make some choices about that. So I'm not forcing my daughter, of course I can't in this day and age, to marry at age 9, and no one forced me to marry at age 9. And in this sense, we are evolving with every year that we are here. And then there's the genetics of it. Some of that we can't help, but as they know from epigenetics, from this lineage of wounding, emotional and spiritual and mental wounding, our diseases, the physical body diseases, come out because of those to some degree. Somebody can be carrying the genetic predisposition for something, but never have it. And how do they get that grace? And with my hip, I don't, but that's okay. By Jesus' death, one of the messages, he said, and his resurrection is, we are pre-understood and pre-forgiven. So why are we still treating ourselves and living as sinners? And why are we saying to the other person, any other person, I know we all live in a lot of judgment. Why is that person doing that way? That's our own inner critic projecting onto the other person. So what if we just accepted that everybody's God's perfect, beautiful, beloved creation? And stop blaming each other and stop pouring our anger and our vitriol. We're right now, I don't, whatever political party you're ascribed to or belief you have, it does matter and it doesn't matter. It matters personally, but maybe universally, it doesn't matter. What matters is how we treat each other today, no matter what we each think, and how we value our own thoughts and opinions. And yes, we'll mess up. We'll make wrong choices, probably more than we make right ones. But if we can see ourselves as God's precious, beloved creation, we can elevate our faith in ourselves, in our ability to understand, in our ability to love. We can bring forward God's love. We can be those hands and feet with love. And when we mess up, and when we make mistakes, and when others mess up or we think they've made mistakes, we can stop and say, this is also God's precious, beloved creation. And in this way, we evolve spiritually. I don't think we talk enough about spiritual evolution. I think in the Christian faith, there's sort of like God is just steadily God and nothing perfect and nothing can change. But I think our lives evolve God too. The more we love, the more we serve each other, the more we wake up and become awakened to what is beautiful within us and stop that inner critic from beating us up and learn from our mistakes and move forward and try again and fail and move forward again and learn again and eventually get to a place where we are that love in action. Maybe Jesus could come back to this world and find a place that he doesn't have to do the work again. We've done it already. Thank you.